This is the presentation I prepared for the Military Influencer Conference that is coming up in a couple of weeks, and I want this group to be the first group to get this content. So let's go through this. The presentation is going to be about how veterans can launch their first physical product online and scale it to 6 and 7 figures. This is RJ. So the year is 2020 and RJ is a corporal in the Canadian Army. Everyone's sent home and most people are sitting around and watching Netflix or playing video games, but RJ is not like most people. He is starting to consume some materials online, teaching himself Shopify, teaching himself Facebook ads, and he launches a product related to his passion for motorcycling. And after a bunch of trial and error, he starts to make sales. And then his sales grow. So he learns a little bit more and starts doing some influencer marketing and organic social media, and his sales grow even more. And eventually, within 6 or 7 months, he's able to replace his income that the Army is paying him. And fast forward to 2021, he retires from the military and goes full-time into e-commerce. And he realizes that he needs some help, so he starts looking for other veteran entrepreneurs, and he stumbles onto a Canadian organization that helps to pair up starting veteran entrepreneurs with more experienced ones. And this is how I meet RJ. And not without any sort of difficulties. He had some setbacks, but the year is 2023 and he has launched his second e-commerce brand successfully. So this story is just one of the many stories of how veterans were able to transition into e-commerce. So today we're going to cover the 3 secrets of e-commerce, which everybody wants to know: what to sell, how to sell, and then how to scale. First, a little bit about me. For those who don't know me, my name is Greg Podopenko, and I came to Canada as an immigrant. I didn't really have a lot of friends at first, but we were fortunate enough to actually buy a computer with a dial-up connection. And instead of wasting time playing video games, which I did a little bit, but much like RJ, I started educating myself and learned how to code HTML and started talking to people on different forums, and actually made a little bit of money online in 1998. So you may think I'm this like old internet OG, but I'm not. I'm actually the tactic stopped working about a year thereafter, and I finished high school. I joined the military. I did a year of active duty and then 22 years in the reserves, retired as a warrant officer. While I was serving in the reserves, I graduated university with a finance degree and worked corporate jobs in finance and gold mining. But then in 2007, I started dabbling with affiliate marketing on the side, and eventually was able to go into it full-time in around 2011. And a few years later, in around 2017, when Shopify started to sort of become famous, another great Canadian company, I started experimenting with e-commerce. So even though my e-commerce earnings have never like eclipsed the earnings that I had with the affiliate marketing and performance marketing, we still were able to get one of the brands that I started into 7 figures in cumulative sales, and we got it featured in national and international magazines, TV shows, radios, and we're able to exhibit at trade shows like CES in Las Vegas and SHOT Show. You can see I'm here with my with my old team. Also did a small acquisition in 2020. It was an Amazon based supplements brand, also kind of related to shooting performance. So that's my foray into e-commerce. And for those of you who may be wondering what e-commerce really means, all it really means is selling products or services direct to consumer. And usually, if you're talking about a physical product, it could be drop shipping, which means you're simply selling other people's goods. Could be white labeling or private labeling, which means it's an existing product that you simply sell under your own brand, but it's not quote unquote unique. And then there's a full-on branding, like developing and selling your own products from scratch, totally custom. Keep in mind, I mentioned services, so digital products as well, and coaching and mentoring, and they can also be sold online as a digital products. So the e-commerce adoption is still growing. This is 2022 data, but essentially you see a lot of upward momentum, and consumers are now more accustomed to making purchases online. Amazon, Walmart, Target Marketplace, Best Buy launched their own marketplace. There's a lot of Shopify stores, and now even people buy on social media directly. So, like everybody heard the hashtag TikTok made me buy it. That means you can buy directly without leaving TikTok, right on ad. However, the markets are changing, and one notable thing is that the click costs for paid advertisements are on the rise. So here's some articles going back to 21, 22, 23. Basically, the cost of ads on Google, Facebook, Amazon, PPC are rising by 15, 20% every year, and sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the industry. Consumer behavior is also evolving, especially right now in the face of recession. People are more conscious of how they spend their hard-earned dollars. They've been pickier with their purchases, and as a result, the cost to acquire those customers for businesses is increasing. Consumers are smarter as well. They are needing more touch points to make a purchasing decision, which means they have to learn more about your products, and they won't normally buy on the first or even second attempt. They're also heavily basing their decision on social proof because they don't trust the media as much with all the fake news, and you don't really know who to believe. So you believe your friends, and just because something is being advertised doesn't guarantee that people will buy it. We're feeling it in our businesses too. Like last couple of years have been pretty tough, and especially in those areas where we rely heavily on paid advertisements. Like you can see the downward trends all across the board. And another statistic, like this is very well studied, that 90% of startups usually fail within the first couple of years. And here are the top 10 reasons. And you can see the top reasons are that there's no market need, or it's user-unfriendly product, or the company is ignoring their customers. So this is important. You will understand why in just a moment. But with all that doom and gloom statistics, don't worry. People still buy stuff. They just buy less of stupid stuff. Like when they were sitting bored at home in 2020 getting government checks, a lot of stupid stuff was bought. Like that is no longer the case, but people still need things that solve their problems. And even though the growth has slowed down, but overall, the retail markets are still growing. They're just growing slower. And the good news is that e-commerce sales online are only about 20% of total retail sales in the United States. So there's a lot of room to grow. And now you may be wondering, okay, so what do I sell? That's the secret number one. But the real secret, in my opinion, is to simply ask a better question. Like the quality of the results you get is normally related to the quality of the questions you ask. That's what Tony Robbins says. So the better question in this case would be, who do I sell to? And once you define who you're going to be serving, then you will know exactly what kind of problems they face. You will learn to speak their language. You can become the top go-to person in that market, and you won't have to sell as hard. You won't have to try as hard. You're not sure about your who. That's a common problem. Often your who is simply you, maybe 3, 5 years ago. So remember those of us who were in the military and sitting around and kind of complaining, oh, I really wish they fixed it. Well, guess what? Now you can be that they, and you can be the one fixing that problem. So here's 3 examples of veterans who have done exactly that. So the first one is a company called Medbach. It's a couple of former naval special operators, and they simply decided to make gear that they were not happy with on operations and sell it back to the government. And literally, that company, I think, is on track to do something like 50 million, if I'm not mistaken, simply solving problems that these 2 operators had when they were in the service. The next one, don't let the name confuse you. It's called Aussie Peelback, but it's a Canadian company, so it's a Canadian special operator company that they developed a type of IFAC that is low profile and fits under your trauma plate, and they became very successful with it. So that's a great example. And last one is actually a friend of mine. It's a sergeant from my reserve unit that I served with, and he was in charge of some VR AR type training in the Canadian Armed Forces. He wasn't quite happy with the way it was run with some of the outdated equipment and software. So he started his own hardware and software company, and he's growing like crazy. And once you decide on your who, on your ideal customer, the next steps is simply to ask them what they want and give it to them. Like, it sounds very simple. It's not easy, but those are the steps. And the way you find out what they want is, the first thing is, like they used to tell us all the time and rec is seldom wasted, which means you can just simply go online and read as much as you can from reviews, comments, and different groups, different forums, Reddits. And you can also go to in-person events and just kind of chat with people and see where the existing products are falling short, or there's a gap in the marketplace. Or you can always simply literally ask the people by the use of surveys or interviews. And normally it would look something like, what is the biggest challenge with the problem that you're trying to solve? And by doing that, you will get the pain points of your target marketing in their exact language of how they would describe it. And that's very powerful for your marketing down the road. And really, by ask, I really mean ask. So, for example, this is a pretty successful Canadian company that makes, they started with weighted blankets and now they make all kinds of stuff for the bedroom, but they were on basically Shark Tank, as you can see here, and they got some initial success, but then they kind of almost went bankrupt because when the show aired, they sold out of the inventory and nothing happened. So they were like, what do we do? Do we just close shop, or do we try to pivot? And essentially they picked up the phone, the 2 co-founders, and they phoned 4,000 people personally and asked them, like, what was wrong with our first product? Like, what did you wish it had? And they took all that feedback, and a few months later they created a new blanket 2.0, and from being a 500K company, they went to something like 50 million in less than 18 months, I believe. That's the power of asking. However, just because they said yes doesn't mean they will buy it. So people vote in surveys, but they really vote with their wallets. I can't tell you how many email surveys or Instagram polls I made with like, would you buy this? Would you buy this item? Do you like this? And people would vote yes, yes, yes. And then we go through the trouble of creating and launching the product, and almost nobody buys. Why? Why is that important? Well, Tim Ferriss, if you haven't heard, he's a 5 times Wall Street Journal best and New York Times bestseller author. So he used online ads to quickly split test the name of his first book before he even wrote it. He spent $200 on Google and wrote 6 little text ads with potential book titles such as Drug Dealing for Profit, Millionaire Chameleon, Broadband on White Sand, and there was one title that emerged as the winner, which is the now famous The 4-Hour Workweek. Did he declare victory? No, he did not. Because online book sales weren't as big back then. This is like 2005, I think. I actually printed some fake book covers, went to several bookstores in California and swapped covers on some books on the shelves and sat back and watched and observed the customers. And when he saw with his own eyes that people were picking up his fake book and because they liked the cover message, he knew that he had something on his hands that was a winner. So that's the concept of pre-sales. Going back to the surveys, like all the interviews and surveys, they are not as great as pre-sales because of one simple reason. There's space for something called the niceness gap, which means people will tell you that your idea is good just to be nice, but it doesn't mean that they actually believe it. They're just trying to be nice to you. So the only way to really validate that you have a winner is with hard data, and that hard data is usually money in the bank. And that goes back to the concept of pre-sales, and a lot of smart entrepreneurs do it. Like I know of several people who do not create a product until they have 100 pre-sales or more. Like there's John Lee Dumas, who's Entrepreneur on Fire podcast. He's a U.S. Army veteran. He launched several physical and digital products, and he famously said on his podcast that he would not start work until he had about 100 people raise their hands from his podcast listeners that yes, they want to buy that. And I think he even collects the money up front in pre-sales. Shopify, which is the big e-commerce platform company, they even encourage it. They built the functionality for pre-sales. They built it right into the product. If you're still not convinced, don't take it from me. Take it from somebody who's made hundreds of millions of dollars. So Daymond John, the People Shark, he famously said, stand on the street corner for 2 hours and offer your wares and see who buys it. Kind of like what he did with his early FUBU designs. Moiz Ali, he sold a native deodorant to Procter & Gamble for $100 million after less than 2 years from launching it. He says that in the early days, they sold the first 50 bars of the deodorant before they even made them. They didn't even have inventory, but they already took sales. So speaking of money in the bank, what do you think is the most expensive customer to acquire? Let me tell you, it's the new customer. It's always the most expensive to acquire. So when you think about what you're going to sell, try to be strategic. Try not to be a single purchase business, something that they only buy once and then never have to buy another one of these again and they never come back. So you're always on the hunt for new customers, and it's over and over and over again. And it gets expensive. So the way to plan against it is to develop something called the value ladder, which means there's other products in the pipeline that are either something that the customer can ascend to or descend to. And here's an example of a company that does it really, really well. I think Apple is currently the most valuable company in the world with, according to the market capitalization. So you can see that, what do people normally buy? First, they usually buy an iPhone, and then they like it so much that they get an iPad and then they get a MacBook, and some people they get the Apple Watch. So that's the concept of Apple's value ladder, and of course, there's more products there. Another thing is, in addition to Ascension and Descension products, is to have accompanying products that you can bundle. Here's an example. Amazon is great at bundling different products. So you go to buy an Apple Watch, and all of a sudden, you realize that you need a waterproof case, you need a couple of different bands for different occasions, and you may need some new AirPods while you're at it. Another company that does it really, really well is McDonald's. Would you like fries with that? That's the famous phrase that makes them billions of dollars. And another powerful strategy is to, not being a single purchase business, is to get your customers to come back via some sort of a subscription program, or having it built into the product as a consumable product or component. And here's a statistic that this is in 2023, seems like subscriptions stick to about 42% retention, versus non-subscription businesses only see sometimes as little as 1% of their customers return. So think about it. So now, armed with this hard data and ideally some pre-sale orders, maybe even some cash collected, now you just have to source it. So for the sake of time, I won't go very deep into this, but essentially you can decide your mode of fulfillment, whether you're going to drop ship, white label, private label, or you have to custom develop the product. Then you decide where you want to do it, US domestic, nearshoring in Canada or Mexico, or offshoring to China, India, Vietnam, Latin America, and so on. A lot of it will depend on cost, also on your audience. Like, for example, we sell a lot to the conservative audience who are very, very much into the made in the USA. So they even ask, is this made in China? And if it is, they will like, oh, I'm not interested. And you can find these suppliers either yourself through different directories. You can hire sourcing agents, or you can attend trade shows both domestically and internationally. For example, right now, the biggest trade show in Asia, if not the world, is happening, called the Canton Fair in Guangzhou, China. It's 3 weeks long, and they do it twice a year. It's really, really huge. Or just a couple of weeks ago, there's, for example, a big nutraceuticals and supplement trade show in Las Vegas called Supply Side West. All right, so the second secret of e-commerce, now that you've validated your who is and what you will sell, it's how you're going to sell it. And you probably heard the fallacy of, if you build it, they will come. Let me ask you a question. If you wanted to sell the most amount of hamburgers in 1 hour, what's the number one thing you need? Is it the best recipe? Is it the best customer service? Fanciest packaging? Best design logo? I mean, those are all important, but number one thing you need really is a starving crowd. And you also need their attention. Why? Because attention is the new oil. 30 years ago, companies put ads in newspapers, TV, billboards, and radio. That's about it. Now there's tons of screens that people look at all the time. You have your cell phone, you have your tablet, you have your smart TV, you have your computer, you have smart billboards. So it's a lot of noise out there. And even though there may be a crowd, you still need to grab their attention. Those who can successfully capture, hold, and multiply attention, those are the companies that will win. And then what's a crowd whose attention you've got? That's called an audience. What happens when you have an audience that knows, likes it, trusts you? Just ask Jocko. Jocko has built a tremendously loyal audience through his podcasts and his YouTube channel. And now he sells leadership services. He sells books. He sells boots and jeans and supplements and energy drinks. And when you have an audience attention, you can sell whatever you want. How do you get in front of an audience? Well, look around. You're at the Military Influencer Conference. There's about 1,200 of people with audiences here. And you can leverage their audiences if you don't want to build your own. And by leverage, I mean you can buy, rent, borrow, or share. Let's dive in. So you can play the long game and build your own audience and sort of become your own influencer. And that can be done through a Facebook group, social media pages, your Instagram account, your TikTok. You can start a podcast, a YouTube channel, a blog, email newsletter, depending on what kind of content creation process you're good at or you want to get good at. And then you can do all kinds of things with that audience. You can build anticipation, you can get engagement, get commitment, feedback. And basically, by cultivating a community, you can then run your pre-sales. It's yours for the taking. Well, that's the long game. So, like, if you wanted to shortcut that, and if you have the resources to do so, you can simply buy existing audiences. Believe it or not, there's a ton of Instagram accounts, Facebook groups, podcasts, YouTube channels for sale. And some of them are not that expensive. And even if you don't have a lot of money, sometimes there's creative financing terms that you can develop. And we don't have time to get into that, but there's many different ways you can acquire existing audiences and make them yours. Then you can simply rent audiences, and basically that could be renting the audience from Facebook by paying for their ads. And I do like paid ads, and that's kind of my bread and butter for the last 15 years. But you need to be able to afford it, and you need to sort of know what you're doing. The good thing about them is that they can be launched fast, and success loves speed. But the downside is that they're getting more expensive, like I said earlier, and also there's I think a diminished trend in customers trusting the ads as much as they did before. Nevertheless, they're still good for quick market validation, or if you do have something that's working organically, it's like pouring gasoline on the fire. Paid influencer marketing, paying people for the use of their audience, also falls into the rent category. You're just doing a paid shout out on somebody's Instagram, you're renting their audience. You can also borrow audiences without sort of paying for it. This is just building goodwill. And again, Tim Ferriss, when he was promoting his first book, did not have an audience. But at the time, the bloggers were the big deal influencers. And what did Tim do? He went to the biggest event in the USA called CES, Consumer Electronics Show. I think it's 140,000, 150,000 attendees usually in Las Vegas, and spent the whole week, not at the show, but at the Bloggers Lounge. I'm like, I don't know how I got in there, but all the top bloggers were congregating there. And by simply spending time with them the whole week, some of them picked up his book, they liked it, tweeted about it, and the book blew up, literally. That's kind of the gist of influencer marketing. Sometimes you'll hear the term the Dream 100 strategy. So essentially, you can figure out a list of 100 plus people who already have the audience that you want, but are not a direct competitor. And you make friends with them. You build goodwill, and if they were to promote you, it will be your dream. And that's why the name Dream 100 comes from. But essentially, those could be influencers, could be PR and media people, other non-competing businesses, you name it. For example, we got one of our brands featured in a magazine with 500,000 subscribers, totally organically, simply because the chief editor and I kind of hit it off through some Instagram DMs, and we had some common backgrounds. And he said, "All right, we'll check out your stuff, and if we like it, we're going to do something about it." And that's what happened. And then there's the next level game, which is partnering with audiences. So instead of hoping they'll promote you for free just because you're friends, or you pay them for a paid shout out once and never to hear from them again, or having to keep paying every time. You just go to somebody who has a loyal audience and you go and suggest a partnership. You help them monetize their audience with your products or products that you co-develop together. For example, here's Chuck Norris, just released a supplement line this year, and I heard reports that it's already an 8-figure company. Do you really think Chuck did all the work of sourcing, formulating, and developing the product and fulfilling it? Of course not. I think there's a private equity company out of LA that approached him, and he just has to be the face of the brand and help promote it to his audience. They do all the work, but they're partners. And once you have an audience that you either build, buy, rent, or partner up on, or borrow, you start selling to your product to that audience. And your point of sale could be, usually you want to start with just one of those. You usually be either on Amazon or your own store. Amazon, the good thing is that you can tap into their audience in addition to your audience, because there's a frenzy of actively searching buyers on their platform. But the downside is that you never own your customer with Amazon. They keep all the data, their phone numbers, their emails. You can't really contact them again. And your own storefront allows you to keep control of the customer data. You can retarget them, you can contact them, you can do many, many things, but you do have to bring your own audience to that store. Very quickly, a couple of words on shipping. So shipping, again, once you sold the product, you have to get it to the customer. So it could be done via drop shipping, which means the manufacturer ships directly for you. Or you can get a 3PL, third-party logistics provider, outsourced fulfillment, where the manufacturer will send the product there and then they fulfill. Or you can fulfill in-house. Like I know a lot of merchants started with fulfilling stuff out of their basement and then quickly grew and moved into their own warehouse. So that's also a way to do it if it makes sense. Keep in mind when you're creating and ideating your product that the shipping weight and size dimensions will matter. Like sometimes, the shipping may be so expensive, it will eat into your profits and take away a lot of that margin. So that's also important to consider when you are designing. Finally, once you've sold it and you shipped it, you have to support it, which means the work doesn't stop. You still need to follow up and make sure that they have the best experience they can. There's a term called customer success that's becoming very popular right now, and it's much more than customer support, but essentially, yeah, it's creating an amazing customer experience so that they are more prone to leaving a review and doing referrals. Why? Because referrals, it's free growth. And the video reviews, they help you sell more products through promoting trust, but also it's user-generated content, which you can then use to grab and multiply attention through the use of ads and social media posting and whatnot. And the last secret that we have on our plate today is scaling. Like everybody really wants to get to that stage. In the beginning, I did promise that I'll show you the path to 6 and 7 figures. Well, the reality is that it's not unreasonable to get to those kinds of numbers with just 1, 2, 3 products on just one sales channel, especially with subscription. And here's some examples of what it could look like. Like when you break it down, it doesn't really look that unattainable, those numbers. That said, if you do have a winning product and you maybe tap out on the existing sales channel, there's multiple options to kind of increase your sales. You can do more influencer marketing, affiliate marketing, run paid ads, put on marketplaces, start selling at events and trade shows. You can then do wholesale and retail, and don't forget international expansion. But try doing all that without losing focus and running out of money. That's very important. Like, for example, just a couple of days ago, Hello Bello, which is like a big celebrity-backed diaper company, I think they were $200 million a year in sales. They went bankrupt with $100 million in debt. So a company that big, still they scaled too quickly and they overspent and they couldn't sell their way out of it. So that's what comes with scaling up, and that's why I think there's another way. So I was talking to a lot of different merchants and went to a lot of different e-commerce events this year, and 2023 is really the year of retention. Remember how I said the cost of acquiring customers is increasing, and it's always the new customer that's the most expensive to acquire. But that means that the best customer to sell to is your existing customer, because it's virtually free. And there's some stats for you. So, like, for example, just a 5% increase in retention can boost profits by up to 75%. And then best in class companies, they have over half of their business coming from repeat customers. And most would agree that retention is cheaper than acquisition. Sales is simply solving problems. So in the beginning, you typically must solve just one problem for your one person to launch your company. And then to scale, you just keep solving problems for those people and be like a detective looking for problems to solve. The best place to find these problems is by spending more time with your audience inside your communities. That's where customer success comes from. Post-purchase interviews, follow-ups, and simply, like I said, ask and you shall receive. So today we covered the 3 e-commerce secrets of what to sell, how to sell, and how to scale. And if you feel like you got value and you want to get more resources and more in depth in some of those things, then I have a free Facebook group for you. If you scan the QR code, it will take you to the group. There's almost 500 other veteran entrepreneurs in the group. So it's a great community, and there's a lot of resources that I share inside. Take a moment. And finally, if you want to get in touch with me personally, I'm available on all the socials with my name, Greg Poropenko, or you can go check out my website. And thank you.